Isis is one of the 9 members of the Ennead of Heliopolis, for she's a daughter of Geb, the god of the earth, and Nut, the sky goddess, and the sister of Osiris and Set and Nephthys, and the wife of her brother Osiris, and the mother of Hor or Horus. Isis is one of the most famous Egyptian goddesses, and the most prevailing in and out of the borders of Egypt. For evidences of her cult in Greece and Italy and Western Europe were found. She represents one of the 3 members of the triad of Osiris, Isis and Horus. She's a symbol of good and giving and motherhood. She's one of the most influencing goddesses in the Egyptian creeds until the end of the Roman period. Her cult has appeared since the most ancient eras and was known since the Old Kingdom as being one of the members of the Ennead of Heliopolis, but not many evidences were found of her before the 5th dynasty. In spite of her vast fame and her creed throughout the ages, we were not lucky enough to know the place of her origin or in which city her cult began. Nevertheless, there is a possibility that her home origin is in the 12th nome of Lower Egypt, in a place known as Izium, referring to Isis. There were a lot of references to it in the Pyramids texts, for the number in which she was mentioned reached almost 80, related mostly to helping out the deceased king. Her cult flourished in the next ages and spread widely, especially through her role in protecting and backing, as her role stretched to the individuals and the common people. Her cult got so spread that she competed with Osiris himself, and she became the goddess of all Egyptians. By time, Isis indulged into relations and was merged with other goddesses, especially Ashtoreth and Bastet, and Nut and Renenwetet, but her most interaction and mingle was with goddess Hathor, who took a lot of her advantages and functional and appearance characteristics. Isis or Iset was known as a sky goddess, and she bore the title of the Lady of the Sky since the Middle Kingdom, and as a goddess of magic and of motherhood too, and as a protective goddess of the living and the dead, maybe due to her role in protecting her husband Osiris in the known legend and helping him to resurrect again, which is what every deceased became hopeful of through getting the title of Osiris whoever. Her name means the throne or the seat of the throne, according to Zita, but Uzing thought that the name is derived from Waset, which means a scepter, or in other words, the one who dominates the authority. Isis is usually pictured in the shape of a woman with a head topped by a throne with 2 steps, which is a symbol that embodies the name of the goddess herself, and it means the residence. She was pictured also as a female whose head stopped by the sun disk and the 2 horns of the cow. She was also pictured in other pictures as a kite and in a serpent form or a cow form, and that was in late periods. According to her important role in protecting Osiris and her son Horus, she was known as one of the most important protective goddesses and as one of the 4 protective goddesses, and for her importance as a protective goddess, she excelled in using magic and cunning and was truly worthy of her title, the Witch. According to the special religion of Heliopolis, both Osiris and Isis are the children of the 2 gods of the earth and the sky, Nut and Geb. Goddess Nut could be best seen represented on the ceilings of the tombs, protecting the deceased from above and playing a vital role in his journey in the netherworld. Isis has played an important role in the mythology of Osiris as his wife and protector, and that's in the fable of the struggle and the legendary ruling of Earth. For Isis grieved for the death of her husband and brother Osiris and cried over him bitterly. Isis then, with the company of her sister Nephthys, searched for the body of her husband Osiris, and after she found him, she got pregnant with her son Hor, the legitimate heir of his father in ruling. This role of Isis in the legend is the main role above which most of the other roles of the goddess were built. Many stories were composed and told about how Isis escaped and hid in the delta in the city of Chemnis, where she gave birth to her son Horus, away from the hands of his uncle and the murderer of his father, god Set. Egyptians had erected hundreds and thousands of statues which commemorate that event. They show Isis suckling her son Horus from her breasts. In spite of the many dangers which Isis has faced in nurturing and raising Horus in the marshes of the delta after his birth, yet she succeeded in preserving him and raising him up, which reflects the importance of Isis' role as a mother goddess of Horus. Isis kept nurturing Horus until he grew up and became strong enough to revenge his father and claim his rights in his inheritance and the lost throne of his father. Isis embodied the royal mother, being a wife of Osiris and a mother of Horus. The pyramid's texts mention that the king was suckled by Isis' breasts. The relation between the pictograph of writing the name of the goddess, which is a seat or the throne, has put the deity in a relation with the king by her being an embodiment of the power of the throne. Isis was known as Weret Hekau, which means the one with the great magic. Magic was involved in many of the roles connected with Isis, especially resurrection of Osiris and getting pregnant with Horus. She was also connected with magic in her helping of the dead in the netherworld. Isis' magic was summoned by telling many spells that help in protection and healing. Most of the mythologies told about the goddess focused on her magical ability, and through them, the true hidden name of Ra was known. Both Isis and Nephthys embodied the oldest form of the mourners in the Egyptian literature and art. The two goddesses were compared to the kite birds or the lady mourners. Goddess Isis has searched for her husband Osiris in the form of a kite and cried loud for his death. On the other hand, the two goddesses were known as the two protective goddesses of the deceased in the netherworld. Isis has gained the role of protection through her task of protecting her dead husband Osiris, for usually she is pictured with Nephthys surrounding Osiris, or the deceased with their wings to protect him. The pyramid's text mentioned how she protected the deceased like she did with her son Horus. In later periods, Isis became the most famous protective deity. Her influence expanded, and her cult spread in an amazing way across different ages, and thus stretched out of the Egyptian borders. A temple of her was found in Byblos city in Lebanon of today. There, she was equated with the local goddess in the image of Ashteret in a relatively very early period. It isn't known if the reason behind that was the mythology of Osiris concerning the arrival of his coffin to Byblos shores, and her going over there, searching for it, and retrieving it, or there are other reasons. Nephthys is one of the most famous goddesses in ancient Egypt, as she was known as a sister to both Osiris and Isis in the Ennead of Heliopolis. She is one of the four protective goddesses and has played the role of the sister to goddess Isis and the protective to god Osiris and the deceased in several reliefs and religious scenes across the different ancient Egyptian eras. The oldest appearance of the name of this goddess goes back to the pyramid texts, as she was mentioned as a member of the Ennead of Heliopolis. The name of this deity is read as Nebet-Het and was written in several ways, as it was written in 2 syllables or was written with the symbol of Neb within the sign of Hut. There were several opinions about the explanation of the meaning of the name, in spite of the clarity of its syllabus, for some translated the name to be the Lady of the Body, meaning the body of the gods. T. Velde sees the interpretation of the name to be the Lady of the House or the Palace, meaning the temple. There are no affirmed evidences on the appearance of this goddess before the 5th dynasty, and that through mentioning her in the pyramid texts as one of the members of Heliopolis Ennead. Some opinions believe that both the names of Isis and Nephthys were job titles of the mourners connected with the mummification operation of Osiris, and that reflects one of the most important roles of Isis and Nephthys in protecting Osiris and mourning him after being killed by his brother Set. Both titles became 2 names of the 2 goddesses. The proof of that is the cult of these 2 goddesses was coherent to the evolving of Osiris' creed since the first moment. The ancient Egyptian texts point out to the birth of goddess Nephthys in the 5th day of the last 5 sacred days of the year, as she was described as being the daughter of goddess Nut. Nephthys was worshipped in many of the cults of worship in Upper and Lower Egypt, and that reflects the status of this goddess and her being sanctified amongst all Egyptians, in addition to the importance of the role she played, especially in what concerns the creed of Osiris. Among the centers of the cult is Per Meru, in the 3rd nome of Upper Egypt, between Esna and El Kom El Ahmar, known as Komir. For Nephthys was known as Nephthys, the one who belongs to Per Meru, and that's in the festival texts of Esna temple. She was also connected with a place called Je-Hesti, and this name came in the pyramid texts and the other sources of the mythology. The connection of Nephthys with the place came within the frame of searching for her brother Osiris as a protective goddess of the dead. She was also worshipped in Hut-Sechem, the capital of the 7th nome of Upper Egypt, for there were signs of the cult of both Osiris and Isis and Nephthys since the late period, for we find on the palette of the so-called Keker from the 22nd dynasty a reference to Khenti-Amenti Osiris, the lord of Hut-Sechem. In addition, the father of Keker was a priest of god Khenti-Amenti Osiris. The priest who owns this text was a servant of these deities in Hut-Sechem, and their worship has continued throughout the Ptolemaic period. Goddess Nephthys or Nebet-Het has appeared in several figures, and that's according to the multi-roles she has played and was connected with in the religion and ancient Egyptian mythologies. For she was pictured in a human form, in the shape of a full figure of a female. Her head is topped with her symbol. Usually she was pictured in that form with goddess Isis, and both of them were pictured the same with their arms hanging downwards or stretched forward to achieve the protection to their brother Osiris. Nephthys was also pictured carrying scorpions or serpents in one hand, or carrying protective symbols and some slogans. Sometimes she was pictured with a tight dress full of stars, inside a blue dress that looks like a net, for her being one of the protective goddesses. In some rare cases, the goddess was pictured in the form of the tree deity, and thus as a lady inside a tree carrying offerings. This image came on one of the coffins of the British Museum. Nephthys was pictured in a human form, putting the sun disk above her head as a sky goddess, or wearing wings as a protective goddess. And she was pictured wearing the crown of goddess Hathor and the symbol of Ankh in her hand. And she was also pictured with a crown of the two reeds. Among the non-human forms of the goddess is the bird form, as she appeared as a kite, most probably because of the skills of the kite in searching and observing, which are required in the search operation of her lost brother Osiris, according to the famous mythology. Goddess Nephthys was pictured in the form of a kite, along with her sister goddess Isis, around the body of Osiris, or the coffin. She was also pictured in the form of the ibis bird, and that's in the Greek-Roman era, and that reflects her connection with god Thoth and goddess Seshat. She was also pictured in the form of a lady with a serpent's head spitting poison, and that's in the front of the sun boat to protect it, or in the form of a cobra in front of the 12th gate of the Book of the Gates, or in the form of a serpent and a human head. Nephthys appeared in the form of a fish, and that's in the scene of the fish offerings in the festival hall of King Weserkun II in Tel Basta. Nephthys bore many titles, like Neterit, the goddess of Senet Neter, or Senet Neter Osiris. She's got a title as a cosmic goddess, which is Nebet Het Nebet Bet Henut Neteru, which means Nephthys the sky goddess, the lady in front of all gods. Amongst her titles are Lady Ma'at, First Lady of all gods, Lady of the Two Lands, Lady of the Cemetery, Mistress of the West, the one with great magic, and the Lady of Protection. Nephthys has led the position of being one of the most important goddesses of Egypt due to her existence as a member in the Ennead of Heliopolis and the role she had played in the mythology, which is clearly shown through what came about the mythology in the Pyramids texts and the Coffins texts in the Old and the Middle Kingdoms.